we are instinctive as human beings, and we respond to things around us. And I think what is important while you're playing a part is to know that it's not, it can't be one kind, that this person is full of many things. And you just have to decide what is most urgent at a particular time. And that is the director's job. The writing will tell you, also will give you an indication, but finally the director has to tell you that. So you have to just present to them that, these are the million possibilities of what this person could do in this one moment. What do you think in the scheme of the story is the most urgent or the most important thing?
Lovely. When I watched the show as soon as it dropped, and that's something that I did with like season one too, and that was the same thing that I decided to follow with season two too. And for me, I think you picked up right from where you left. Right, even though Neeti is on like this completely different character arc. I mean, she has her relationship to focus on, she has her own career to focus on, but I think you sort of brought in that ease to the character. Was that something that came in very naturally or comfortable for you when you sort of like decided to slip into the role for season two?
I mean, this is a character that I really like. I connect with her because I feel she's a lot like me. There are some characters you play and you feel they're different from you, and they're interesting for that reason. But this one is something which I feel I know her. So it's kind of almost cathartic to play situations that you know that you would find yourself in, and you would sort of navigate it probably similarly in terms of thought process, even though circumstances might be different. So I always am very excited about being Neeti, because I feel she's one of those women who is fierce but doesn't need to externalize that, and is so secure in her internal confidence that she doesn't need to sort of project that in any way. So I really enjoy playing her, and I find it easy to slip into her shoes. Um, the only thing that I did work on was to get a certain ease and comfort around being a police officer, which is different from how she was in season one. In season one, she was finding her way around. She was very wide-eyed. She was nervous about the decisions she's making. She's also a trainee officer who's been thrown into being in a very being a part of a very important and difficult case, in season one. In season two, she's a much more lived in police officer. She knows her way around her job. uh, matlab, she has an understanding of how to deal with certain situations. So that is something that I had to work on, for which I shadowed a police officer in season one, and I shadowed the same one in season two. Because when I shadowed her in season one, she was a trainee IPS officer, and when I met her in season two, she was ACP, like Neeti Singh is in season two. So that was a very beautiful coincidence. So I spent some time with her. So that's that part of the job, that part of the role required work. But the rest of it is something that I find easy, but always interesting to play out with my co-actors.
hmm I'm so glad you touched upon Neeti's growth from season one to season two because I personally saw that happening too. I mean, in season one, she was this wide-eyed, a little nervous, but still, she was really headstrong, right? Like she knew what she was chasing towards, and then we sort of got like a very nuanced portrayal in season two, and we got like a solid understanding of who Neeti Singh, the ACP is. This entire journey from being like a wide-eyed girl to now becoming like a girl boss in season two. Does this journey resonate with you in any way?
Yes, I think all of us go through this in life, where we start out very idealistic, very sort of uh, 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 very thinking that our hard work and sincerity can sort of change the world, and that's the attitude with which um, uh, that's the attitude with which I lived my college years, for sure. And then, of course, along the way, you learn, you realize that there are systems within which you have to work, that there are situations which need negotiations. There are situations which need to be sort of handled tactfully rather than just sort of being exactly the person you are all the time. And so you learn that in life along the way. And yeah, you learn how to be more in charge of yourself. You learn how to be more in charge of the situations around you. But it's not always one or the other. It's not like I feel today that that I'm not wide-eyed in certain
Mm.
situations. I still am, and I'm grateful for that, because I'm happy to know that there are still some things that can make me feel like I don't know, that can make me sort of tap into the absolutely pure and sincere side of me, where I feel कि नहीं मुझे नहीं आता अब आप मुझे सिखा दो, so those situations are also there. And I think similarly with Neeti, like for example, when Jugnu and Azad ran away,
Mm.
it's a big hit to her herself as a professional, and I think that really triggers her irritation with Devinder even more, because she, in some way, in her head, she does blame him for that happening, and she's not able to forgive herself, and therefore she's not able to forgive him. So I think that you one can never say in life that now I know how to find my way through every situation, that I'm always in charge. No, but yeah, there are more situations in which I feel like I that this has happened before, and now I probably know better.
Mm.
So I think Neeti is also like that.
Yeah, this dynamic between Neeti and Devinder. Did you find yourself empathizing with this couple? Because I just feel like they were together, but things were just happening at the wrong period of time. Like things were supposed to go their way, but life just came along and just threw their entire plan off the road. Or did you at some point just feel really frustrated with the way Devinder acted? Because for me, they were at times where I was like, okay, I think as like an army officer, he should empathize with Neeti. I mean, like you're technically in like the same field of work, so why isn't that sort of compassion or that sort of support coming from him? What was your take when you sort of went through the script and you were just like taking a look at the dynamic?
Actually, you're exactly right, and I'm so
Mm.
happy for that feedback, because that is what we intended it to be. We intended
Mm.
it to be this couple who is trying to make things work, but like you exactly said, and this was the brief from Tanuj as a director, that
Mm.
just their timing is off.
Mm.
You know, at one time when the other person is ready to sort of make it work, the other person is not at that time. They are ready probably at another time.
Mm.
So it is and it is something which I think all of us experience in relationships. When you are ready to sort of make it work in a particular way, it's not necessary that the
Mm.
other person is sort of up for that at that time. So that's how we intended this relationship to be. While I was playing it, I did feel exasperated, actually, would be the correct word, as very often you feel in relationships which are not working, where
Mm.
there is love, there is no lack of love, and therefore there is a desire to make it work, but it just does not seem to work. In fact, whatever you do seems to be going wrong,
Mm.
and then that spirals into another sort of problem, because you feel like, hey, I put my best foot forward, but you didn't meet me there.
Mm.
So then what do I do? And I made such an effort to put that best foot forward. I sacrificed something else in order to be able to do this, but you weren't there. And today you want to make it work, and yesterday
Mm.
you weren't. So now it's already gone. So it was that dynamic. So I think I felt that exasperation, and I had a lovely co-actor, actually, Akash Dahiya, and uh, we sort of, along with Tanuj, tried to improvise scenes between Neeti and Devendra that
Mm.
might have happened, which are not in the script,
Okay.
so that we are able to come to a scene with some history, you
Mm.
know. And it's not a history that we sat in a van and thought of and made up
Mm.
from our own experiences. Is actually scenes that we played out with each other, so that we could, because sometimes you can't, when you play out scenes and with two actors who are good at improvising and who are on board to improvise, you get such beautiful material um, uh, to create history between the two characters.
Mm.
that and that kind of history you can't create by sitting and thinking, that doesn't
Exactly.
happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we tried to do, and I think that really helped both of us, because we had
Mm-hmm.
some very interesting things happen in those improvisations, which sort of became um, something that you might recall when you're doing a scene, much like you
Mm-hmm.
when you're in a situation in life. It's not that situation doesn't exist in vacuum. It's sort of loaded with what else has happened between these people, or what else has happened to these people individually. You come to that relationship with so much uh, baggage, so that baggage needs to sort of be built up when you're working on a piece like this. Otherwise it'll look not so nuanced.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the attempt, and I hope that we succeeded.
The final scene, I think this was like the second last episode where you and Devinda have this outburst where you go like, nahi ho raha hai mujhse. Was that improvised in any way? Because that dialogue exchanges felt very natural and they were like moments of tension too. What was that one of the instances where, you know, the two of you sat down, decided to improvise the whole thing, or it was something that you followed the script too?
So we never actually played out the scenes that we never rehearsed the scenes that we
Hmm.
were going to shoot. I always find that a little detrimental to the preparation process. I always feel that we should improvise scenes which might have happened,
Okay.
in between two scenes or before a scene. So
Hmm.
that's what we had done. But on the day that, and because we had done all those improvisations, we had enough material to infuse into this scene.
Hmm.
We knew the dynamics of this relationship. It had played out a certain way, and we could sort of use the history of those improvisations in the scene when we did it. So on the day, yes, we made a lot of changes to it
Hmm.
according to what we were feeling, according to how it was staged. And I think it was a very beautiful. We were all like Tanuj the director, David the
Hmm.
DOP, Akash and me. We didn't know where the scene was. None of us knew ye kaise hone wala hai. And
Hmm.
I think that's a good place to start with, because I always feel that if you're discovering the scene, it's always more beautiful than when you come to it with surety,
Hmm.
because life doesn't play out with surety. Life always plays out with people trying to make something work, and sometimes succeeding, sometimes not.
Hmm.
So I think we came to that shooting day with that energy. But we'd worked with each other for a fair amount of time before we shot that. So I think we really sort of managed to uh, 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 vibe well in
Hmm.
this scene, and I think it sort of we all understood where we were coming from. So then David chose to lens it a particular way. He chose to light it a particular way.
Hmm.
Tanuj chose to stage it a particular way, and he was very phenomenal in the kind of direction that he gave us on that day. Because I feel scenes which are so nazuk, so to say, can be ruined if they're sort of if they're over articulated, or if you're over instructed, but at the same time you do need direction. So I think we connected well on that day, and we tweaked things as and when. Like, there were some things which we felt were working, and that's great, and there were some
Hmm.
things that we felt didn't work. But of course, at the end of that day, I remember I still felt that we could have done. I was nervous. I wasn't
Hmm.
sure whether we had got it right or not, and I kept sort of prodding Tanuj. I was like, "Is it fine? Is it okay? I don't know. Should we try something else? Should we also do this?" And he was like, "No, it's okay. I think we've got something which is very beautiful."
Hmm.
And I still had my doubts, but I have to say I agree with him now.
Something that I noticed while watching this season was that the way Nidhi behaves is highly influenced by the people around her and the relationship that she shares with them. When you're all alone in the room, when you're trying to sort out the case, I see a very calm and composed woman. When you're with Vartika, I see Nidhi looking up to her. And when you're obviously with Devendra, there's like a very how do I put this? Like a very innocent side of Niti that comes out, still wide eyed. Which of these relationships do you think influences Niti the most?
I think a large part of it is her relationship with Devender in this season,
Hmm.
but a lot of it is also her relationship with Vartika.
Hmm.
Because her relationship with Vartika is sort of, um, uh, defining to her as her relationship with her work, you know. So and that is a big part of her life, and she doesn't want to let herself down as a police officer. She
Mm.
takes that job very sincerely and very, and every moment of it to heart. You know,
Mhm.
it's not, she's not casual about any of it. There might be a sort of confidence with which she deals with certain situations, and it might in some situations tend to look casual, but it's not casual to her at all.
Mhm.
So I think her relationship with Vartika is a lot about her relationship with her work, actually,
Mhm.
and that informs a large part of her life. But because of the situation with Devender in this season, I think that is sort of becomes, and even though she doesn't want it to, becomes more urgent, you
Hmm.
know, because of the attention that he's sort of demanding.
Hmm. Now, I mean, I hope there's a season three. I'm praying that there's a season
I
three.
hope so too.
We all need a season three because it's left at a cliffhanger. I mean, we don't know what's going to be the future with Vartika. We don't know like where Devinda and Neeti are heading. But say if you had to tell me at this point in time, where do you see Niti's character heading now that assuming that Vartika's taken that promotion and she's moved to the outskirts of some city and maybe Devinder's also like gone back to his base camp. How do you see Niti's character reacting and evolving from here on?
I don't know, actually. That's an interesting question. But if I have to think of it, I think my first response always is that um, I hope she gets a really tough case which she
Hmm.
cracks. Because there is a side of me which really wants Neeti to be this, to be Vartika, you know,
Hmm.
to be, because that's what Neeti desires. She wants to be a police officer like Vartika is. Though
Mhm.
in season two, she's seen a more human side of Vartika, where she's seen her grapple with her own confusions. And probably like every junior who looks at their senior, even though you idealize them, at some level you feel like, hey, maybe I could have handled this better.
Yes, it's a human tendency. It's just
Right.
very human. Yes.
So so maybe I'd like to see her like that in
Mhm.
season three. But even if maybe she won't make that choice, who knows? Maybe she chooses to sort of really work on her personal life a little
Mhm.
more.
All right. So I'm just going to quickly touch upon the mood on the set. I mean, you're fresh from the Emmy big win. Critics loved season one. Fans loved season one. What was the atmosphere like when everyone was sort of picking out their roles from where they left?
So when
Mhm.
we started shooting season two, we hadn't won the Emmy for season one at all. But I did feel even then that season one was a very, very, very special show and very
Mhm.
different one from anything else that I have seen coming out of Indian original content. And I still think so, you know. And I was very proud of the show, and I was very honored to be a part of it, you know. So that thought was there, but that didn't translate into any pressure for me.
Mhm.
I don't take on pressure like that, like like now I think that, oh, if season 2 hadn't worked out
Mhm.
well, it would have really been bad for us. But I wasn't able to sort of see it through at that time, because that's how I am. I don't think things through like this. I'm more sort of about what we are going to do then, rather than how things will turn out later. That's generally my modus operandi. That's my
Mhm.
default modus operandi. So I don't, so I'm able to sort of not take the stress of how it will turn out. But I take on a lot of stress on about how what we are doing right now, a lot.
Mhm.
And so I was just sort of dealing with, have I done all my police work well?
Mhm.
Have I checked all those boxes? So I had gone to spend some time with this officer who I shadowed, and
Mhm.
I had to really squeeze out that time. And I really felt that uh, that I went and spent actually 5 days with her as a fly on the wall on her police station, but I still felt like that felt like it had fallen short. Because
Mhm.
that's the thing about preparation. The more you do it, the more you feel you need to do it.
Mhm.
It never feels like, oh, I'm prepared. So actually, 4 days before a shoot is actually the hardest. And then I'm not thinking of how will the show turn out. Then I'm thinking of Have we worked enough on getting the costumes right? Have we worked enough on have we spent enough time improvising? Have I had time for the script to settle with me? Have I had time to connect what I've seen as a fly on the wall in a police office to see how that works its way into the script? Because you've done this research work, uh, but if it doesn't fit in, you have to let it go. You can't say कि मुझे अपना रिसर्च दिखाना है यार, ये तो मैं रिसर्च करके आई हूँ, मैं इसको तो डालूंगी
जगह
यहाँ
भी
पे.
नहीं है तो
हाँ
भी
हाँ.
पोस्ट करके
so
डालना.
so you can't do that, right? So you have to let go of some very interesting things that you found just because they don't have space in the script. I mean, to give you an example from Delhi Crime, in fact, when police officers wear their beret, which is what Neeti wears, there's a very specific position. So many of them do this.
Okay, to measure.
So that the symbol comes exactly on this side of your nose. That the L is how they measure it. So this is something that I had thought that I will always use. Whenever Neeti wears her beret, she does this. It's just a reflex, And when we shot that scene before I enter Vartika's office, we shot that scene twice actually. It was reshot. When we shot that scene for the first time, there was this moment where I wear my beret outside her and I do this and I wear my beret and then I enter. And I have this conversation with her where I tell her I was on the phone. Right? When we reshot the scene, it seemed to us very too ritualistic. And this is there in the same police station. She doesn't always wear her beret when she. So I had to let go of that to do that. And I kept telling Tanuj, yaar, we should have put it in. We should have put it in. So we were confused. Should we sort of have this little detail, or should we sacrifice the little detail to show a little, to make it more real? What should we do, which makes it more real, the detail or the lack of it? So yeah, that's what I'm saying. So these are things that are playing on my mind at that time. I'm not thinking any show matching. At that time I'm only thinking. And in fact, I did a show recently in which I happened to meet a forest officer. And I had just gone, it was a travel show and I was anchoring it. And I had just gone and I sat, I was sitting in the Jeep for him to take us. And he had a beret. And before he put on his beret, he did this.
Oh.
He did this and he put it on. And I had a moment when I was like, oh. And in fact, I messaged Tanuj that exact moment. I said, I met this forest officer who did this. And I said, I almost wanted to cry. And still I messaged him saying, I think we should have put that scene in. So, yeah.
While you were talking about pressure and stress, I found that you have a very interesting perception towards it. Most of us stress about the end outcome. That, okay, all the efforts that I'm putting in, is it going to translate into a good project or not? And because of that stress, we often end up overlooking what we're doing currently. Is this methodology something that you picked up, or you spend a lot of time, training yourself when you stepped into the industry, or this is how you've been from the very beginning?
No, I think this is just my personality. In fact, I've been trying to train myself on the other side, where that I feel like I have to get a sense of the larger picture. It can't be only about the details. So I'm trying to sort of train myself on the other side also, because I feel like increasingly when you are sort of in a position where people expect you to lead a few things, then you have to look at the larger picture. It's not that you can only be absorbed in the details. Though I would love to only be absorbed in the details, I don't want to get into anything more. But very often, I think as you progress in life and all of that, and people expect you more to collaborate than just to follow, then I think and to make good and healthy creative collaborations, I think you have to have a sense of the larger picture. So I'm trying to train myself towards that. But looking at the details is something that comes very naturally to me. I'm like that about anything. If you give me a shelf to clean in my house, I can take all day to do it.
You're really thorough with everything, every project that you pick up.
Yeah. that's not always a good thing,
Mhm.
you know. I
Mhm.
mean, it depends on how you channel it. Like you have
Mhm.
to learn how to use it. And so I'm still grappling with that. Like there are some times when I have to consciously tell myself, okay, now just let go of this. It's fine. You know, this, whatever you've done for it is okay. Now
Mhm.
it should be on its own. And let's see how things turn out. So
Mhm.
yeah, those are things that we all as professionals, I guess, navigate.
Um, Season 2 touched upon a variety of topics. I mean, there was caste profiling, there's bigotry within the police force, there's income inequality, and obviously the overarching message that no one is born a criminal. What were your biggest takeaways from this season? Something that, while you're reading the script, you were like, I'm so glad this angle has been put out, and now it's going to go out into the public too.
Actually, the one angle that I was moved by, and in
Mhm.
particular, I think it was the story of this girl who's married out, who is from a denotified tribe and is
Mhm.
married outside the community, and
Mhm.
her whole family gets picked up because of suspicion, and then she's in the police station, and she goes to
Mhm.
Vartika's office, and then
Yeah, she
Vartika
runs into
responds
it.
badly, and then
Mhm.
apologizes to her
Mhm.
and asks her what she came to tell her. So I
Mhm.
think that story moved me a lot
Mhm.
because I think it really sort of points at the nature of discrimination. You know, this is
Mhm.
how discrimination plays out. That somehow there is a cycle to it which one is not able to get out of. Whether you're the person who discriminates or whether you're the person who's discriminated against,
Mhm.
and that is the tragedy of discrimination.
Mhm.
Uh, and the tragedy is that it'll always be there. It'll
Mhm.
be there in maybe more in some situations and less in some situations, more in some times and less in some times, but it'll always be there.
Mhm.
And that is the uh, tragedy of it, which
Mhm.
I think really moved me. And we've all, I mean, whether coming from privilege or not, uh, have had seen some kind of discrimination in our lives, right? Of different intensities.
Mhm.
And I think as women in patriarchal societies, we've seen a lot of it
True.
in our everyday lives.
Mhm.
And I think I always get very uh, sad about uh, the nature of discrimination.
Mhm. Considering that you've played a handful of diverse roles, do you often see yourself taking a part of each character and sort of absorbing it into your personal life?
It's a difficult question to answer because there's so
Mhm.
many parts to it. You know, it's not one way of preparing for any role.
Mhm.
Plus, it's not so distinct what the character is and who you are. You don't know yourself as a person so much. I can't say Rasika does this. I mean,
Mhm.
Rasika has so many different things, right? I'm different on different days. I'm different in this interview. I might walk out of this door and I might respond very differently. And if somebody was shooting this, they'll be like, "Hey, hello, what happened? These this is like two different people, you know."
Mhm.
So we are not one kind of person. Situations, circumstances, time of day, just what happened before, just sort of
Mhm.
we are instinctive as human beings and we respond to things around us. And I think what is important while you're playing a part is to know that it can't be one kind,
Mhm.
you know, that this person is full of many things. And you just have to decide what is most urgent at a particular time. And that is the director's job,
Mhm.
you know. The writing will tell you, also will give you an indication, but finally the director has to tell you that. So you have to just present to them that, you know, these are the million possibilities of
Mhm.
what this person could do in this one moment. What do you think in the scheme of the story is the most urgent or the most important thing, you know? So that is the kind of preparation uh, that I have. And I think to be able to present your director or your co-actors with the possibilities of what could happen in this moment, you have to create a world around your character, you know.
Mhm.
So you can't sort of go to it with uh, only with your own experiences. You have
Mhm.
to push yourself a little bit more. Like when I like you have to go and be a fly on the wall. So I said you have to in order to create that world around the character, you have to um, uh, uh, sort of expand your own experiences a bit. You can't go to it with the experiences that you have had in your life. You can also, that is one way to do it. But I always feel that it's always more interesting if you push yourself to, for example, be a fly on the wall in the office of a officer. For example, for Hamid, I went and hung out with the women of that village that I was shooting in for a bit. You don't know what exactly will find its way into the show or the film, but I believe that subconsciously it will inform the work that you're doing. And even if it doesn't find its way into this work, it's an experience in life that you will carry to some other work. You've enriched yourself with an experience that your life in the normal course of your life would not would not have allowed it, you know. So I think that I feel is important too, and it can be different things. Like for Hamid, it was hanging out with the women in the village where I was cleaning saag with them. You know, in Kashmir you get this saag called haq, which is specific only to Kashmir, and the women of the village sit and clean that saag. You know, so and for example, I remember in one scene I used that because I had been doing it for those days. And it so happened that we could put it in one scene, you know. So the one scene where this guy comes to take money from me and Hamid, I'm sitting and cleaning haq, you know. So it could be that, it could be being a fly on the wall in somebody's office, it could be just listening to music, it could be anything, you know. I'm preparing for a film right now for which I'm learning how to play the piano. And that's not the most important part of the film, but I felt I needed to do it because I felt like music is a part of this person's life and it has to be a part of my life in some way. Um, and yeah.
How's that coming along, playing the piano? Is this something that you'll be picking out even after the film has wrapped up? Do you see yourself practicing?
You know, I always think I will. For example, I learned how to play volleyball last year for a sports show that I
Oh.
was doing. And I remember coming back from my practice session one day and I told my husband, I want to quit acting and become a volleyball player. Of course, ever since the show has gotten over, I have not even picked up. I've just picked up the volleyball lying at home and I sometimes do this. But otherwise, no, I've not played or been on a court. So yeah, I would love to. And I always desire to when I'm in the preparation process. It hardly ends up happening because you move on to something else. And much as you want to and as much as there is intent, it doesn't end up happening.
I do. I hope to see you playing the piano sometime, maybe on an Instagram live session or something, or randomly, like I'll open your Instagram and I'll see you like playing one of your favorite tunes on the piano. That would be an interesting thing to see on your feed.
I would love to. I don't know though that you know, like when you're learning things for a film where you're required to learn something, it's such an artificial way of learning that it almost disturbs me because you don't get the time that regularly a person who's learning how to play this piece would have, because this person would have started at age 7 and been at it for all these years, right?
Yeah.
You are suddenly having to do this in a compressed time, so it's kind of it takes away from the joys of learning, but I'm still happy that I'm able to do it. Yeah.
You know, Rasika, right before we like wrap up this interview, I've always been curious to know one thing whenever I sit down with an actor. As an actor, you're supposed to do justice to the director's vision. There's justice to, you know, the way the writer has imagined the character's growth. Then there's the audience involved, and there's obviously the actor's expectations too. Whose validation matters the most in this circle?
Very tough one, but I believe I start out every shooting day telling myself that my job for today is primarily to make things work for my director. So that is the one that I give most important to. But if you would ask me the three things that I would probably think on the day of the shoot is one, that I want to make my director happy. Two, I want to be there for my co-actor. Three, I want to experience something new today. You know, so I think these are in order of importance.
What can we expect from you in the coming year? I know it's going to be equally exciting, but like, can you let me in on something? Something that you're really looking forward to next year?
I'm really looking forward to the work that I've done coming out. I'm particularly excited about the volleyball show.
Hmm.
Um, It's been the sports drama series uh, is something which I've always wanted to do. Sports drama is totally
Mhm.
the kind of genre I enjoy watching.
Mhm.
So I hope that that comes out well. And I still have, I've just seen a little bit of it. I haven't seen the entire show.
Hmm.
So I'm looking forward to that coming out. I'm looking forward to how the manic audience of Mirzapur is going to react
Oh,
to season three. And
mhm.
uh, as I've also done a supernatural thriller, so that's also a new genre for me
Hmm.
with Amazon. So that's going to be out. I don't know, maybe end of this year or early next year.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know when that's going to be out, but I'm looking forward to all this coming out to see how it's panned out, because all this actually Delhi Crime is the first one to come out of the work that I had done almost together last year. So I'd finished Delhi Crime, then I'd gone
Hmm.
on to do Spike, which is the
Hmm.
volleyball show, and I'd finished Spike and then gone on to do Adhura, which is the supernatural thriller.
Mhm.
So I'm really looking forward to seeing is so many things that I'd shot like back to back, whether that's different from each other or how I have dealt with it as a performer and how the audience will respond to it.